The painters using each medium must employ different styles. What does employ mean? Employ means to use different styles. What is a style? Style is a particular way of doing something, alright? For instance, an artist using oil paints can simply paint one opaque color over another until he gets the desired result. For instance, what does that mean? For instance is the same as for example. Instance means example or something happening. The case of something happening. An artist using oil paints can simply paint one opaque color over another. What does over mean? Well, over means on top of that, until he gets the desired result. What does desire mean? Desire means to want, the wanted result. Watercolor artists, however, are unable to do this, okay? Because it's transparent. The paint going over another will show the paint beneath. That's why the watercolor artist can't do this. But if the paint is opaque, you can't see the paint under the newly painted paint. So for oil painters, this is possible. Let's move on to the next part.
Oil painters can generally achieve the results they want. If they make an error, all they have to do is paint over it with another color. No one will know the difference in the end. Watercolors, on the other hand, are much more unpredictable. Watercolor artists simply can't paint over their mistakes. Thus, they often have to improvise when something unexpected happens while they are painting.
Okay, what is this part about? This part is about how the painters should correct the error. Okay, oil painters can just simply paint another color over it, but watercolor painters, they should improvise, and the results that you get with using watercolors are unpredictable. Okay, so that's what this part means. Oil painters can generally achieve the results they want. Oil painters can generally, what does that mean, general? General means as a whole, okay? Not very much concerned with the details, as a whole. So generally means normally. Achieve the results. What does achieve mean? If you achieve something, you get something after a lot of effort. The results they want. If they make an error, all they have to do is paint over it with another color. If they make an error, what's an error? Error is a mistake, something you have done wrong. All they have to do is paint over it with another color. No one will know the difference in the end. In the end, okay? Watercolors, on the other hand, are much more unpredictable. Watercolors, on the other hand, what does that mean? On the other hand. On the other hand, you use this expression when you want to talk about something that contrasts the content that you have just said. Watercolors, on the other hand, are much more unpredictable. What does that mean? Unpredictable. Predict means to say something beforehand, before it happens. Pre means before. Dict means say. Unpredictable means you can't say what will happen. You can't. So it's difficult to expect what will happen. Okay? Watercolor artists simply can't paint over their mistakes. Thus, they often have to improvise when something unexpected happens while they are painting. Thus, what does thus mean? You use thus when you want to talk about a consequence or the result of something that you said before. That you said just before, okay? Thus is same as therefore, okay? and it's the formal form of so. So it means so. So they often have to improvise. What does that mean? Improvise means to do something with the things that you have, okay, and without without having a plan beforehand, okay, just do a thing or make a thing with whatever you got, okay, and not plan to do something in advance. Is improvising, okay. They often have to improvise when something unexpected happens while they are painting. Let's move to the next part.
There are some other basic differences. Let me see. With oil paints, a color can be made lighter by mixing it with white paints. With watercolors, the paint can be lightened by adding, logically enough, water.
Okay, what is this part about? Some other differences, okay, of these colors, and specifically how they can make the color lighter. With oil paints, you make it lighter by mixing white paints, and with watercolors, you have to add water. There are some other basic differences. Let me see. With oil paints, a color can be made lighter by mixing it with white paints. With watercolors, the paint can be lightened by adding logically enough water. Logically enough. What does logical mean? Logical means reasonable or sensible. Okay. So let's look at the questions. What's the lecture mainly about? What is it about? It's about the differences between watercolors and oil paints, okay? A lot of aspects. Let's look at other options. B, the styles that watercolor artists often use. This is not the main topic of the lecture. And the professor didn't talk about the styles. C, the inventing of both watercolors and oil paints. This was a part of the passage, but this is not the main part, okay? D, the effects. Hold on. They just talked about the invention of the modern, okay, modern paints. Okay. D, the effects on paintings made with oil paints. What is an effect? Effect is something that caused another thing to change. Okay. The effects on paintings made with oil paints is a part of the lecture, but not the main part. Okay. Why does the professor mention Jan van Eyck? In English, you pronounce this Jan, right? But in Spanish, they call it Jan. Okay, and if you had Van or Von, it means from the family of this. So this is like a high-class family. Why does the professor mention Jan van Eyck? Why? Because he was the one who, what did he do? Who invented the modern oil paint, okay? Oil paints as we know them today were invented in the 15th century by Jan van Eyck. Okay, so what is the answer? D, to name the man who invented modern oil paints, okay? Let's look at other options. To praise his use of watercolors in his paintings. To praise. What does praise mean? Praise means to say that somebody has done a good job. Okay. B, no, it's not to praise his use of watercolors, right? He was the one who invented it, not the one who used it in his paintings. Maybe he have used it, but that's not the main thing that the professor says. B, to claim that his oil paintings are very valuable. To claim that, what does claim mean? Claim means say that something is true. His oil paintings are very valuable. It means it's of much value. Okay? That's not why the professor mentioned Jan van Eyck. C, to describe his style of painting to the class. It's not to describe his style of painting to the class, so the answer is D. Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question. Let's listen.
Watercolors. Type 4. Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
Watercolors, on the other hand, are much more unpredictable. Watercolor artists simply can't paint over their mistakes. Thus, they often have to improvise when something unexpected happens while they are painting.
What does the professor mean when he says this?
Thus, they often have to improvise when something unexpected happens while they are painting.
So what does the professor mean by saying that? Means the watercolor painters cannot predict what will happen, so they will just have to deal with the situation that they encounter. Do you understand? They can't plan something ahead for a effect or result. So what's the answer? A mistake with watercolors requires the artist to change the painting somehow. Okay, so you either have to know the meaning of improvising, or you will have to infer this from the passage if you don't know what the word means. A mistake with watercolors require means needs, all right? Needs the artist to change the painting somehow. That's the meaning of improvising. Let's look at A. Most watercolor artists have no plan for how their works will look when finished. It doesn't mean they don't have a plan, but it means that you can't plan ahead. Okay? So A is not quite the answer. B. Watercolor artists tend to make mistakes more often than do oil paint artists. What does tend to mean? Tend to means easily do or often do. Okay? So this is not saying that watercolor artists make more mistakes than oil painters. Okay? C. Unexpected mistakes happen with great frequency for even the best artists. Unexpected mistakes happen with great frequency. What is frequency? Frequency is how often something happens. So great frequency means very often. But this is not about for even the best artists, okay? It's not about this. So this is not the answer. So the answer is D. Okay, this passage was quite easy and quite short. It will be of no problem for you to understand. Next time, see you with a more interesting, difficult passage. I hope. Bye-bye.